Admiral Kethvar stood before the massive viewing screen in his command ship, watching the blue and green planets slowly rotate below them. His forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the intelligence reports scrolling across his personal display. The third planet of the Sol system looked peaceful from orbit, with white clouds drifting over vast oceans and brown land masses. "Sir, the reconnaissance data is complete," reported Commander Zolth, his second-in-command. The younger Zephyrian's skin showed the nervous purple coloring that came with delivering potentially unwelcome news. "The species calls themselves humans. They appear to be divided into nearly 200 separate political groups." Kethvar's mandibles clicked in amusement. 200 separate groups on a single planet? He had conquered dozens of worlds in his long career, but he had never encountered a species so fractured. Most civilizations worth conquering had at least achieved planetary unity before developing space travel. "Yes, sir. Our scouts report that these humans still engage in warfare with each other. They use primitive chemical explosives and metal, projectiles. Their most advanced spacecraft can barely reach their own moon." Zolth pulled up holographic displays showing human cities, armies, and their crude rocket technology. "Intelligence estimates their technology level at approximately 1,500 years behind our own." The Admiral studied the images with growing confidence. Human soldiers looked fragile in their bulky armor, carrying weapons that seemed almost medieval compared to Zephyrian plasma technology. Their vehicles moved on wheels or tracks instead of proper anti-gravity systems. Most amusing of all, they still burned fossil fuels for energy instead of harnessing the power of their star. "What about their military capabilities?" Kethvar asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Laughable, sir. They have no unified command structure, no orbital defenses worth mentioning. Their largest weapons are chemical bombs that would barely scratch our shields. Our analysis suggests that a single cruiser could defeat their entire planet." Zolth paused, then added, "They do seem unusually aggressive toward each other, but that works in our favor. Divided enemies are easily conquered." Kethvar nodded slowly. In his 2 centuries of military service, he had seen this pattern many times. Primitive species always fought among themselves until a superior force arrived to unite them under proper leadership. The Zephyrian hegemony had brought order to dozens of chaotic worlds, transforming savage civilizations into productive members of their empire. "How many ships are we taking for this operation?" Zolth asked. The Admiral considered the question carefully. Standard doctrine called for overwhelming force to minimize casualties and demonstrate the futility of resistance. But Earth seemed so primitive that a full battle fleet would be wasteful. The hegemony had other conflicts requiring attention, including the ongoing rebellion in the Outer Rim territories. 3 cruisers and a support vessel should be more than sufficient, Kethvar decided. "We will make the usual demonstration of power, accept their surrender, and begin integration protocols. The entire operation should take no more than a few planetary rotations." Zolth's skin shifted to a lighter shade, indicating relief. "The crew will be pleased, sir. An easy conquest means more shore leave when we return to Zephyr Prime." "Indeed. Begin preparations for the standard first contact. Protocol. Send word to the hegemony that we expect to add Sol 3 to our territory within the week." Kethvar turned away from the viewing screen, already planning how to divide this new world among his officers as rewards for their service. The Admiral walked through the corridors of his ship, observing the efficient work of his crew. Zephyrians were natural warriors, evolved from pack hunters on their homeworld. Their 4 arms gave them advantages in combat, while their tough exoskeletons could withstand most primitive weapons. They had conquered their way across 12 star systems not through technology alone, but through superior physical capabilities and military discipline. As he reached his private quarters, Kethvar reviewed the psychological profiles of human leaders. The reports painted a picture of emotional, irrational beings who made decisions based on feelings rather than logic. Their inability to unite even when facing common threats suggested a fundamental weakness in their nature. Some human nations spent more resources fighting each other than they did on advancing their technology. "Computer, display human military history," he commanded. The wall screen filled with images of human conflicts throughout their development. HFY watched with professional interest as primitive humans fought with spears and swords, then progressed to firearms and mechanized warfare. What struck him most was the sheer frequency of their conflicts. These creatures seemed incapable of peace. "Fascinating," he murmured. "They fight constantly, yet they never seem to learn from their defeats. Each war appears to make them more violent, not more wise." The computer highlighted statistics about human warfare. Billions of their kind had died in conflicts over resources, territory, and abstract concepts they called ideologies. Their planet showed scars from countless battles, with entire regions still contaminated from their most recent global war just decades ago. "Sir, we are receiving long-range communications from the human planet," Zolth reported over the ship's communication system. "They appear to be conducting some kind of surveillance of our fleet." HFY was not surprised. Most species noticed when warships appeared in their system, though few had the technology to actually observe them clearly at such distances. What is their response? Increased radio chatter between their various nations. It seems they are discussing our presence. Let them discuss. Soon they will have more pressing matters to consider. The Admiral settled into his command chair, studying tactical displays of Earth's major population centers. The conquest would begin with demonstrations over their largest cities, followed by demands for surrender. Once their leaders realized the hopelessness of resistance, the integration process could begin. What HFY did not realize was that his primitive targets were already working with efficiency he had not seen before. Across Earth, military leaders were pulling out classified files marked First Contact Scenarios. Scientists were analyzing the strange ships hanging at the edge of their solar system. Engineers were checking weapon systems that had been built in secret, hidden from orbital observation. The humans were indeed divided, aggressive, and violent. But they had one trait that the Admiral had missed in all his intelligence reports. When threatened by an outside force, when their very survival was at stake, these fractured, warlike creatures had a remarkable ability to set aside their differences and focus their violence in a single direction. As HFY reviewed his battle plans one final time, confident in his easy victory, millions of humans below were preparing for war. Not the limited political conflicts they usually fought among themselves, but total war for the survival of their species. Every weapon system, every soldier, every factory was about to be turned toward a single goal: destroying the alien threat that had dared to threaten their home. The Admiral thought he was about to conquer a divided, primitive world. Instead, he was about to face humanity united for the first time in their violent history. It would be the last mistake of his long military career. The transmission began at precisely 0600 Earth Standard Time, broadcasting simultaneously to every major capital on the planet. Admiral HFY had chosen this moment carefully, when most human governments would be alert and ready to receive his message. The holographic image of the Zephyrian commander appeared on screens across Earth, his four arms spread wide in what his species considered a gesture of magnanimous authority. "Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet of Sol," HFY began, speaking through translation software that had been hastily programmed with human languages. His words came out stilted and mechanical, but the meaning was clear enough. "I am Admiral HFY of the Zephyrian hegemony. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire." In the emergency session room beneath the Pentagon, General Sarah Chen watched the alien's image with growing anger. Around the table, representatives from every major world power sat in stunned silence. The Secretary General of the United Nations gripped his chair so tightly his knuckles had turned white. "You will surrender all military assets immediately," the Admiral continued. "Your governments will transfer authority to hegemony administrators. Your population will be relocated to designated areas for processing and work assignment. Those who comply will be treated with the mercy befitting their primitive status." "Processing?" whispered the Chinese premier. "Work assignment? They're talking about slavery." Kethvar's message continued without pause. "To demonstrate the futility of resistance, we will now provide a small demonstration of our technological superiority." The transmission showed a view from space as one of the Zephyrian cruisers fired a single shot at Mining Station Alpha 7, humanity's furthest outpost in the asteroid belt. The beam of energy lasted less than a second, but when it ended, the station had been completely vaporized. "You have 12 of your planetary rotations to prepare for surrender," the Admiral concluded. "Further resistance will result in more significant demonstrations. This is our final offer of peaceful integration." The transmission ended, leaving the room in dead silence. Then General Chen stood up slowly, her face showing an expression that would have worried Admiral Kethvar if he had understood human facial expressions. "Peaceful integration," she said quietly. "They destroy our station, threaten to enslave our entire species, and call it peaceful integration." The Russian president leaned forward. "General, what are our options?" "Honestly, from a purely military standpoint, we're outmatched. Their technology is clearly superior. They can strike from orbit with impunity, and we have no way to reach their ships." Chen pulled up tactical displays showing Earth's military assets. "But that doesn't mean we're helpless." Within hours, something unprecedented in human history began to happen. Nations that had been enemies for decades started sharing their most classified military secrets. The Americans revealed their orbital defense platforms, hidden satellites that had been disguised as communication relays. The Russians opened their files on experimental energy weapons. The Chinese shared data from their anti-satellite programs. In laboratories around the world, scientists worked frantically to analyze the fragments recovered from Mining Station Alpha 7. The debris field had been small, but enough material survived to give human engineers their first look at alien technology. What they found was both intimidating and encouraging. "Their energy systems are incredibly advanced," reported Dr. James Morrison, leading the analysis team at MIT. "But their material science isn't that far ahead of ours. This hull fragment shows they're using a crystalline matrix that we can probably reproduce." Meanwhile, Admiral Kethvar was receiving reports that confused and concerned him. Instead of the expected panic and immediate surrender, Earth's communications networks showed increased coordination between human governments. Military units were moving toward defensive positions rather than standing down. "Sir, their response is unexpected," Commander Zalth reported, his skin showing the orange tint of confusion. "They appear to be mobilizing for war rather than preparing for surrender." Kethvar studied the intelligence reports with growing disbelief. This must be some kind of mistake. No primitive species has ever refused our terms after a proper demonstration. "The translation software confirms their messages, sir. Multiple human leaders have broadcast statements rejecting our offer. They are using terms like death before dishonor and never surrender." The Admiral read the transcripts himself, becoming more bewildered with each defiant statement. The human leader called the President of the United States had actually said, "Come and take it," whatever that meant. The British Prime Minister had been even more direct, using words that the translation software marked as extremely insulting. "Perhaps they do not understand the hopelessness of their situation," Kethvar mused. "Prepare for a more significant demonstration. Target one of their military installations. Something large enough to show them we mean business, but not so large as to damage valuable infrastructure." What the Admiral could not comprehend was that humanity's response was exactly what their evolutionary history had programmed them for: Faced with an existential threat, every human instinct screamed for them to fight. Their ancestors had faced extinction before. Ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, plague, and countless predators. Each time, they had survived not by surrendering, but by becoming more dangerous than whatever threatened them. The newly formed United Earth Defense Coalition worked with desperate efficiency. Every military base on the planet shifted to maximum alert. Weapons that had been built in secret, hidden from satellites and international inspectors, were rolled out and prepared for combat. Humanity had spent decades preparing for war with each other, but those same preparations would serve them well against an alien threat. In the depths of the ocean, nuclear submarines loaded with missiles designed to strike orbital targets. Hidden in mountains, railgun installations powered up for the first time since their construction. Across the globe, pilots climbed into experimental aircraft that had never been publicly acknowledged to exist. 3 days after the ultimatum, Admiral HFY received his first real surprise. The humans had launched something from their planet, not the primitive chemical rockets his intelligence had described, but sleek vehicles that moved far faster than anything in their files. "Sir, we're detecting multiple launches from the surface. These craft appear to be using some form of ion propulsion." Zolth's skin had shifted to deep purple, indicating serious concern. "They're moving toward our position at significant velocity." "Impossible. Our intelligence reports clearly stated they lack advanced propulsion technology." "The intelligence reports may have been incomplete, sir." HFY watched as dozens of human spacecraft approached his fleet. They were small, clearly designed for speed rather than heavy combat, but they were moving far faster than anything the humans were supposed to possess. Worse, they showed no signs of slowing down or attempting to communicate. "Are they trying to ram us?" he asked incredulously. His answer came as the first wave of human ships opened fire with weapons that definitely did not exist in any of their intelligence files. The shots were crude compared to Zephyrian plasma cannons, but they were hitting targets at ranges that suggested sophisticated targeting systems. As his shields absorbed the impacts, Admiral HFY realized he had made a serious error in judgment. These humans were not the primitive, easily conquered species his reports had described. They were something else entirely, a species that had hidden their true capabilities and was now revealing them in the worst possible way. The easy conquest had just become a real war. The first wave of human fighters struck the Zephyrian fleet like angry wasps attacking a giant. Their weapons barely scratched the alien shields, but their tactics immediately told Admiral HFY that he had vastly underestimated his enemy. The humans didn't attack in neat formations like civilized species. Instead, they swarmed from multiple directions, using unpredictable flight patterns that made targeting difficult. "Sir, their attack vectors make no logical sense," reported Commander Zolth, watching the tactical display with growing concern. "They're attacking from angles that put them at maximum disadvantage, yet somehow our gunners are having trouble hitting them." HFY studied the battle patterns himself. The human pilots were doing things that violated every principle of space, combat he had learned in 2 centuries of military service. They flew directly into crossfire zones, used their own ships as shields for their wingmates, and executed maneuvers that should have been impossible for beings who had allegedly never fought in space before. Analysis of their flight patterns suggests they're using tactics adapted from atmospheric combat, the ship's computer reported. However, they're modifying these tactics in real time to account for zero-gravity conditions. In real time? HFY's mandibles clicked nervously. "You mean they're learning as they fight?" Affirmative. Each wave of attackers shows improved understanding of 3-dimensional combat compared to the previous wave. This was unlike anything the Admiral had encountered before. Most species took decades to develop effective space combat doctrine. These humans were apparently figuring it out during their first battle, using principles that should not work in vacuum but somehow did. The second wave of human ships arrived 6 hours later, and Kethvar immediately noticed the differences. These fighters moved with more confidence, their attacks more coordinated. Worse, their weapons had been upgraded. The energy signatures showed human engineers had been working frantically to improve their firepower based on data from the first. Engagement. "Sir, these new weapons are actually beginning to stress our forward shields," Zolth reported with undisguised alarm. How did they upgrade their technology so quickly? Down on Earth's surface, the answer was becoming clear. In factories around the world, human workers were performing miracles of engineering and manufacturing. Assembly lines that had been producing cars and consumer goods were retooled in hours to manufacture weapons components. Research facilities that had been competing with each other for decades now shared data instantly across secure networks. Dr. Sarah Kim stood in the middle of the most classified laboratory in South Korea, watching as her team reverse-engineered alien technology with frightening speed. "The power source is some kind of quantum crystalline matrix," she explained to the international team of scientists joining her by video link. "If we can replicate the resonance frequency, we should be able to build our own energy weapons." "How long?" asked Professor Zhang from Beijing. "Normal development time? 5 years minimum, but we don't have 5 years." Sarah looked at the debris fragments scattered across her workbench. "We have maybe 5 days before they realize we're more dangerous than they thought." Across the globe, similar scenes were playing out. In underground bunkers, military engineers worked alongside civilian contractors to build weapons that existed only as theoretical designs just days before. Orbital defense platforms, hidden for decades as communication satellites, were being armed with the most destructive weapons humanity had ever created. The third wave of human attacks came from an unexpected direction. Instead of fighter craft, the humans launched missiles from their planetary surface. But these weren't the primitive chemical rockets the Zephyrians expected. The new missiles moved at significant fractions of light speed, using propulsion systems that hadn't existed in any intelligence report. "Sir, incoming projectiles are using some form of mass driver technology," the weapons officer reported. "Impact in 30 seconds. "Impossible. They don't have mass driver technology." "They do now, sir." The missiles struck the Zephyrian shields with kinetic energy that made the ship's hull ring like a bell. The shields held, but only barely. More concerning was the fact that each missile carried sensor packages that were analyzing the shield frequencies and transmitting data back to Earth. Admiral Kethvar was beginning to understand that he faced an enemy unlike any in hegemony history. These humans didn't just fight back. They learned from every exchange, adapted their tactics, and improved their technology at a pace that defied all logic. "Commander, request immediate reinforcements from Hegemony Command," he ordered. "Sir, our original report classified this as a minor pacification operation. Requesting reinforcements would require explaining why we need them." Kethvar's pride warred with his growing concern. Admitting that a primitive species was giving him trouble would damage his reputation and possibly end his career. But the alternative might be losing his entire fleet to creatures who were proving far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The decision was made for him when the fourth wave of human attacks began. This time, the humans didn't attack his ships directly. Instead, they had somehow managed to launch boarding craft, small, heavily armored vessels that moved too fast to be easily targeted and seemed designed for one purpose: getting human soldiers onto Zephyrian ships. "Sir, multiple breaches in the outer hull," reported the security chief. "We have boarding parties." This was completely unprecedented. No primitive species had ever attempted to board hegemony vessels. The very idea was considered impossible. How could beings who had never fought in space possibly hope to engage trained Zephyrian warriors in ship-to-ship combat? The answer came quickly and brutally. The human boarding parties moved through the ship's corridors with tactical precision that spoke of centuries of urban warfare experience. They used weapons that were crude but effective, tactics that were simple but deadly, and most disturbingly, they showed no fear at all when facing obviously superior alien warriors. Security teams to decks 7 through 12, Kethvar ordered. Repel boarders with extreme prejudice. But the security footage showed something that chilled the Admiral to his core. The humans weren't just fighting, they were winning. Zephyrian warriors, bred for combat and equipped with the finest weapons their civilization could produce, were being systematically eliminated by primitives using what appeared to be modified industrial equipment. The worst part was watching. The humans adapt in real time to Zephyrian tactics. When the aliens used their superior mobility to attack from multiple angles, the humans quickly learned to watch all directions. When the Zephyrians tried to use their natural armor advantage, the humans focused their fire to overwhelm individual targets. Every mistake the aliens made was immediately exploited, while human errors seemed to teach them lessons that made them more dangerous. "Sir, the humans have reached Engineering Deck 3, the security chief reported, his voice tight with something. Kethvar had never heard from a Zephyrian warrior before. Fear. "How is that possible? That deck is protected by our best soldiers." "Was protected, sir. The humans are using some kind of coordinated pack tactics. They move like they've been fighting in spacecraft their entire lives." Admiral Kethvar realized, with growing horror, that he was no longer commanding a conquest fleet. He was commanding the survivors of humanity's first test of their war-making abilities. And if this was just their opening move, he was beginning to understand why the humans had refused to surrender. They hadn't been afraid of the Zephyrian hegemony. They had been preparing for war. 2 weeks into what was supposed to be a simple conquest, Admiral Kethvar stood in the ruins of his command center, watching his fleet die piece by piece. Of his original 4 ships, one had been completely destroyed by human boarding parties who had somehow managed to overload its reactor core. Another was dead in space, its crew either captured or eliminated by human soldiers who fought with a savagery that defied explanation. "Sir, the humans have launched another attack wave," Commander Zalth reported from the auxiliary command station. His skin had permanently shifted to the deep purple of extreme stress, and one of his 4 arms hung useless at his side, a reminder of his encounter with human boarding troops. "These fighters are using energy weapons that match our own plasma technology." Kethvar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "That's impossible. 3 weeks ago, they were using chemical propulsion and metal projectiles. How can they have developed plasma weapons so quickly?" "Intelligence reports suggest they have somehow reverse-engineered our technology from debris and captured equipment," Zalth replied quietly. "But, sir, that's not the worst part. What could be worse than primitives copying our weapons? They're not just copying them, they're improving them." The Admiral watched in growing horror as human fighters engaged his remaining escorts. The enemy craft moved with confidence now, no longer the desperate amateurs who had first attacked his fleet. These pilots flew like veterans, using maneuvers that combined human innovation with captured Zephyrian technology in ways that should not have been possible. Analysis of their new tactics suggests they have somehow acquired detailed knowledge of our standard combat procedures, the ship's computer reported in its maddeningly calm voice. "They are countering our maneuvers before we complete them." "How? We've never fought humans before. There's no way they could know our combat doctrine." "Unknown, sir. However, their adaptation rate continues to exceed all known parameters for technological development." What Admiral Kethvar didn't know was that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their ability to learn from their enemies faster than those enemies could adapt to them. In the brief time since first contact, human intelligence agencies had captured and interrogated dozens of Zephyrian prisoners. Human scientists had analyzed every piece of alien equipment they could get their hands on. Most importantly, human strategists had studied every second of combat footage, identifying patterns and weaknesses in Zephyrian combat doctrine. The results were now evident in space above Earth. Human ships no longer flew into Zephyrian firing solutions. Instead, they used the aliens' own tactical preferences against them, forcing them into disadvantageous positions and exploiting the predictability of their military training. Captain Maria Santos sat in the cockpit of her fighter, leading a squadron of modified human ships against the remaining Zephyrian cruiser. Her aircraft had been built using a combination of human engineering and captured alien technology, creating something that was neither fully human nor alien, but entirely deadly. "Wolfpack leader to all units," she transmitted to her squadron. "Remember, these bastards want to enslave our families. Show them what happens when they threaten Earth." The responding voices carried accents from around the globe: American, Russian, Chinese, Brazilian, Nigerian, Indian. Pilots who 3 weeks ago might have been enemies now flew as a unified force with a single purpose: destroying the alien threat to their world. Santos watched her tactical display as her squadron executed maneuvers that would have been impossible with pure human technology. The captured Zephyrian systems gave them speed and maneuverability their ancestors could never have imagined, while human creativity gave them tactics no alien military academy had ever taught. "Target the command ship's ventral shields," she ordered. "Intelligence says that's their weak point when they're trying to maintain orbital position." The attack that followed demonstrated everything the Zephyrians had failed to understand about humanity. The human pilots didn't just follow orders. They improvised, adapted, and supported each other with an instinctive coordination that their enemy had never encountered. When Santos's ship took damage, her wingman immediately moved to cover her. When the aliens tried to concentrate fire on individual targets, the humans scattered and reformed like a flock of birds avoiding a predator. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar watched his shields fail section by section under the relentless human assault. "Engineering, redirect all power to defensive systems." "Sir, we've already redirected all available power. The humans are targeting our shield generators with surgical precision. They know exactly where to hit us. Then target their ships. Destroy them before they can complete their attack. Sir, our weapons can't acquire target locks. They're using some kind of electronic countermeasures that scramble our targeting systems." Kethvar's mandibles ground together in frustration. The electronic countermeasures were another example of human adaptability. They had analyzed captured Zephyrian targeting computers and developed jamming systems specifically designed to confuse them. Worse, the humans seemed to understand Zephyrian technology better than the Zephyrians understood human technology. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth," the communications officer reported. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through." The main screen filled with the image of a human female in military uniform. General Sarah Chen looked directly at the camera as she spoke, her words carrying the absolute certainty of someone who knew she was about to win. "Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian hegemony," she began, somehow knowing his name despite never having been formally introduced. "This is General Chen of the United Earth Defense Coalition. I'm calling to offer you the chance to surrender. Admiral's skin flushed with the orange of indignation. "Surrender? You dare offer me surrender terms?" "Admiral, in the past 2 weeks, we have destroyed or captured 3 of your 4 ships. We have taken over 400 of your personnel prisoner. We have reverse-engineered your technology and improved upon it. Your remaining vessel is surrounded by a fleet of our ships, and your shields are failing." Chen's voice remained calm and professional. "Surrender now, and your surviving crew will be treated according to the laws of war. And if I refuse, then we will board your ship and take it by force. Your choice, Admiral." Kethvar looked around his ruined command center at the faces of his surviving crew. These were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds, but their expressions showed something he had never seen before. Defeat. Not just military defeat, but the recognition that they were facing an enemy beyond their understanding. "How?" he asked quietly. "How did a primitive species defeat the hegemony? General Chen's expression softened slightly. Admiral, you made a fundamental error. You assumed that because we fight among ourselves, we are weak. You didn't understand that our conflicts have made us the most experienced warriors in the galaxy. Every human military doctrine, every weapon system, every tactical manual was written in the blood of our own people. When you threatened our world, you didn't face a primitive species. You faced the graduates of the most brutal military academy that has ever existed, human history. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Kethvar alone with the wreckage of his pride and his fleet. Outside his ship, human vessels moved with predatory grace, no longer the desperate defenders they had been at the start of the conflict. They had become something else entirely. The apex predators of space combat. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kethvar understood what it meant to be prey. The final battle for Admiral Kethvar's flagship lasted exactly 17 minutes. The human boarding parties moved through the ship with mechanical precision, their tactics refined by weeks of combat against Zephyrian forces. They knew every weakness in alien armor, every flaw in their weapons, every predictable response their enemy would make. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez kicked down the door to the Admiral's command center, his modified plasma rifle trained on the surviving Zephyrian officers. Behind him, Marines from 6 different Earth nations moved with perfect coordination, their equipment a deadly fusion of human innovation and captured alien technology. Admiral Kethvar, Rodriguez said through his suit's translator, by the authority of the United Earth Defense Coalition, I place you under arrest for crimes against humanity. The Admiral looked up from where he knelt beside his wounded communications officer. His ornate uniform was torn and stained, his natural armor cracked from the boarding action. But it was his eyes that told the real story. The look of a being who had finally understood how completely he had been outmatched. Before you take me prisoner, Kethvar said quietly, allow me to send one final message to my people. Rodriguez hesitated, checking with his commanding officer over the radio. After a moment, he nodded. Go ahead, but make it quick. Admiral Kethvar activated his personal communicator, knowing that his words would travel through quantum relay networks to every corner of the Zephyrian hegemony. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty, the testimony of a warrior who had learned the truth too late. This is Admiral Kethvar, commander of the 3rd Conquest Fleet, to all hegemony forces, he began, his words being automatically translated and broadcast across dozens of star systems. I am sending this message from the command deck of my flagship, now under human control. He paused, looking at the human soldiers who stood around him. Young faces representing every continent of their world, united in a way his intelligence reports had said was impossible. I was wrong. We were all wrong about the species of Sol 3. They are not primitive. They are not weak. They are the most dangerous military force this galaxy has ever produced. His voice cracked slightly as he continued. In 3 weeks, they have gone from chemical rockets to plasma weapons. They have defeated a full hegemony battle group using tactics we have never encountered. They have captured our ships, our personnel, and our technology, and somehow made it all better than it was before. Behind him, Rodriguez watched the alien admiral with something approaching respect. The old warrior was delivering his own death sentence. No military organization would forgive such a complete failure. But he was doing it anyway because he understood that his people needed to know the truth. Do not come to Sol 3, Kethvar continued. Do not engage the humans in combat. Do not threaten their world or their people. We thought them weak because they fight among themselves. But we failed to understand that their internal conflicts have forged them into perfect warriors. Every human child learns tactics from studying their ancestors' battles. Every human soldier has studied thousands of years of military innovation. They do not just fight, they evolve their fighting with every engagement. The Admiral looked directly at the camera, his alien features showing an expression that needed no translation, pure fear. I have commanded fleets that conquered 12 worlds. I have faced the best warriors of a dozen species. None of them. Compare to these humans. They fight like demons, think like computers, and adapt like some kind of military virus that learns from every mistake and becomes stronger with each battle. He gestured to the human Marines surrounding him. Look at them. 3 weeks ago, they had never fought in space. Now they move through our ships like they were born here. They use our own weapons better than we do. They have turned our technology against us in ways we never imagined possible. Rodriguez felt a chill as he listened to the alien's words. The sergeant had been in combat for most of his adult life, but he had never heard an enemy speak with such absolute certainty about their defeat. "This is not a retreat recommendation," Admiral Kethvar continued, his voice growing stronger. "This is a survival warning. The humans are no longer confined to their single world. They have our faster-than-light technology now. They have our star charts. And if their past behavior is any indication, they will not be content to simply defend their territory." The Admiral was right. Even as he spoke, human engineers were studying captured Zephyrian star drives, reverse engineering the technology that would allow Earth's forces to travel between solar systems. The same scientific minds that had developed plasma weapons in weeks were now working on improvements to alien FTL systems. "We came here expecting to conquer primitives," Kethvar said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Instead, we have awakened, something that should have been left alone. We have given the galaxy's most dangerous species a reason to look beyond their own world. We have shown them that they are not alone in the universe, and we have taught them that other species will try to destroy them if they can." The transmission was being received across the galaxy in hegemony command centers and allied species. Monitoring stations. Alien military leaders watched in growing alarm as one of their most successful admirals delivered his final report from the deck of a conquered ship. "The humans call themselves Homo sapiens," the Admiral continued. "It means wise man in their ancient language. But wisdom is not what makes them dangerous. They are dangerous because they never stop learning, never stop improving, and never forgive those who threaten their families." Rodriguez checked his chronometer. They needed to secure the ship and prepare for departure, but something about the alien's words made him want to hear the complete message. "I end this transmission with a warning that I pray the hegemony will heed," Admiral Kethvar said, his voice carrying the authority of his final command. "Mark the Sol system as forbidden territory. Spread word to every species in the galaxy that Earth is not to be approached, not to be threatened, and certainly not to be attacked. The humans are no longer a primitive species hiding on a single world. They are coming, and they are coming with weapons and tactics that we cannot counter." The Admiral looked one last time at the human soldiers, these representatives of a species that had turned his certainty into nightmare. "We thought Earth was weak. It was the last mistake we will ever make." The transmission ended, leaving silence in the command center. Rodriguez looked at his prisoner with something approaching sympathy. The alien had just signed his own death warrant to save his species from making the same mistake he had. 6 months later, the first human ships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Zephyrian space. They were sleek vessels that combined human engineering with captured alien technology, crewed by soldiers who had cut their teeth fighting the galaxy's former apex predators. The lead ship broadcast a simple message to the Zephyrian homeworld. "This is the Earth ship Defiance. Admiral Kethvar sends his regards. We're here to discuss the terms of your surrender." Across the galaxy, species that had never heard of humans began receiving Admiral Kethvar's final message. Some laughed at the idea of primitive aliens defeating a hegemony fleet. Others, wiser or more cautious, began moving their territories away from the expanding sphere of human influence. All of them would eventually learn the same lesson Admiral Kethvar had discovered too late. When you threaten humanity's home, you Don't face a primitive species. You face evolution's most successful predator, armed with the weapons of the gods and the tactical knowledge of 10,000 years of warfare. And they never, ever forget who started the fight.